Good evening. Welcome, Her Excellency, Ambassador Miss Julia Longbottom. Welcome to our university. We shall begin tonight's dialogue. I was just talking to some of the students in the audience, and we have a very good range from first-year students to MA students, PhD students, students in the humanities to engineering to science and other fields. So it's a great mix of students here to welcome you. So thank you again for coming, and we shall begin. And before we listen to the Ambassador Longbottom, we would like to ask our president, Dr. Teruo Fujii, to give an opening remark. President Fujii, please.
So good evening, everyone. And Ambassador Julia Longbottom, welcome to the University of Tokyo. As the president of the UTokyo, it is a really great honor to welcome her here, and also for this exciting moment for us to have dialogue with her. And in fact, the relationship of the UTokyo and the United Kingdom goes back many, many years. And in fact, also that is not only with the UTokyo, but also Japan's modern nation or national system. And I heard about, in fact, this is just several years ago. So I heard about this story on the Choshu 5. That is, you know, the 5 young leaders visited UCL, University College London. That was in the year 1850 or so, 1863. And they include, you know, Hirobumi Ito, who's the first prime minister in Japan, and also Yozo Yamao, who's head of Kobu Daigakko, which is a school of engineering before joining UTokyo. So, and so they were at the age of 22 and 26, in fact. And this School of Engineering, Kobu Daigakko, joined the University of Tokyo in 1886. So 10 years after UTokyo was founded. And then it became Imperial University. And it owed a great deal to the engineers and scholars who came from the United Kingdom. And in fact, I'm also from the Faculty of Engineering, and also graduated from the School of Engineering. So that I know many names, British names, who basically contributed very much to the foundation of our School of Engineering itself. And so this is basically a thanks to the connection made by Choshu 5. And in fact, Yamao asked Ito, asked through Ito, in fact, Hugh Matheson. So Hugh Matheson is famous for the founder, as a founder of Rio Tinto. You know, this is also a huge mining and resource company. Now still, exists. And also then Hugh Matheson is basically introduced this Henry Dyer, an engineer who's born in North Lanarkshire, in fact, Scotland, and who learned at the University of Glasgow. So he was appointed as the principal or acting head of the school. And also, you know, the Josiah Condor, who's also a famous architect, designed, for example, Mitsubishi #1 building. And they also restored that building just in front of the Tokyo station. So like this way, as you may know, so all these contribution of the or help of the British scholars made a kind of quite big achievement for the foundation of UTokyo itself, and also as well as this engineering faculty. So these ties, in fact, continue today. For example, we have enjoyed a strong research partnership with the University of Cambridge which is Ambassador Longbottom's alma mater. And so we have been hosting an annual symposium together, and since this is since 2015. So it's been already 10 years since. And in fact, this past March, we had the pleasure of welcoming Cambridge's Vice Chancellor, Dr. Deborah Prentice, here to our campus. And we also maintain active educational collaborations, including a university-wide exchange program with 10 institutions across the UK, sponsored by the Center of Global Education. So as we prepare, and also as we prepare to celebrate 150th anniversary for our founding in 2027, and in that year, we will launch a new college, which is called UTokyo College of Design, as you may know. And the prospective dean of this college also will be the first British dean, who's Professor Miles Pennington. So like this way, we look forward to further strengthening the deep and long-standing relationship we have shared with the people of the United Kingdom. And today's dialogue with Ambassador Longbottom confirms and celebrates our commitment to these ties. So thank you so much for your attention and welcome to the University of Tokyo. Thank you.
Thank you, President Fujii. Now, I would like to ask Ambassador Longbottom to give an address to our students. So please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your warm welcome. And it's fantastic to be here this evening with so many young people from the University of Tokyo. Thank you for coming, perhaps from some of you from across Tokyo, to be here this evening. So I thought I would talk just a little bit about myself as the British ambassador to Japan, how I got to be here, what it means a little bit to be a woman doing this job, and then something about the journey or the story of an increasing number of women working in foreign policy, but also what more we are doing and can do to ensure that women and diverse members of our societies are fully participating in our government and business and economic life. So to start off, I was going to talk a bit about my own journey. So I arrived in Japan as ambassador in early 2021 during COVID. But it was my third time being posted to Japan. And you might find this shocking or not shocking, but if I show the first slide, I'm actually the first woman to be ambassador to Japan. And interestingly, President Fujii spoke about the Choshu Five. 1863, they went to the UK. So if my maths is right, yes. It was just a little before that we had our first man who was actually not ambassador, but the first minister, it was called in those days, before we had diplomatic relations to Japan. These pictures are taken from a wall in the ambassador's residence in Tokyo. We call it the library, but it includes the photographs of every person who has been the ambassador or the minister as was to Japan over the last 167 years. And as you can see, it's taken all this time until we had a woman doing the job. I first came to Japan, I joined the diplomatic service from Cambridge University. I graduated in immediately joined the Foreign Office. So I graduated in 1986, joined the Foreign Office as what we call a fast stream civil servant. So in the, I suppose, of the high-flying graduates, I was amazed I got the job. My family had no connection to diplomacy. I had studied languages at Cambridge, French and German, and it just interested me to work in a job that was involved with other countries around the world, had the opportunity to work abroad, to learn more languages, and that was how I chose Japanese. Felt like a nice, challenging language to learn. And actually, my now husband was my boyfriend at the time. He was working in business, and it felt like a good bet if we decided we would aim for Japan, that he might be able to also get a job and work here. And he did, and that all worked out extremely well. People often ask me, when I first came to Japan in 1988, 89, the person who was ambassador at the time is in the bottom right-hand corner of the far photograph, Sir John Whitehead. I must have always dreamt, people say, of being the British ambassador to Japan. And I say, well, no, not really, because none of them looked like me. They felt a very different breed of person, people from very different backgrounds, maybe rather elite backgrounds, and that wasn't me. So it took me quite a long time before I realised. I think I knew I always wanted to be an ambassador, but I imagined I'd be in some far-off island somewhere, some tiny place. Maybe that was what I could aim for. So what does that, what are my reflections on that? Well, the organisation in those days, the world of diplomacy, the world of working in government, it was still pretty new that women could expect to have a career and to move around the world and to do a job like the one I do. In fact, until, I'll show another picture, until 1973, women in working for the Foreign Office, so the British Foreign Ministry, until 1973, if you got married, you had to resign. Why was that? Well, if you were a diplomat, if you worked for the Foreign Ministry, it was expected that you would move around the world to work. You could be sent, to foreign countries. And the assumption was if you were a woman and you were married, your husband had a job and they couldn't move if you moved, or you might have a family. So that was the expectation. And then in 1973, the United Kingdom passed its first anti-discrimination legislation. And from that point, things in theory were equal for men and women. Although, of course, it took some time to create the new policies or culture or expectation where women really could operate as equally as men. I said I never imagined that I could be the ambassador to Japan. And what changed that, fortunately, was the longer I continued working and worked on a number of different areas. I was posted in Holland and Poland with my husband, with my 3 children. They went to school in foreign countries. We made 2 jobs work. We were lucky, but we also, created our luck as well. Eventually, I was working in an Asia Pacific job, and my boss at the time, we were talking about my career and my future, and he said, "But you'd be an ideal person to be ambassador to Japan. You could do that job." And I think I was surprised at the time. I said, really? And from that moment, I believed that it was possible, but I'd never seen another woman be ambassador to Japan. And what was interesting was that in countries where we had female ambassadors, and oddly, I remember Argentina was one, successive women applied for that job. They'd seen one woman do the job and they thought, well, that job's one that, I could do as a woman. But all the other jobs that nobody had ever done as a woman before probably felt more difficult. So I was very lucky that somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, you could aim for that job. So we have come a long way as the UK Foreign Office or Foreign Ministry. This is the green countries on this map are the countries where we had a female ambassador or high commissioner in a Commonwealth country at the end of 2024. Of course, it changes quite a lot. Interestingly, right now, of the G7 countries, there's only me, who is a woman, as ambassador. But at one point, I think in 2022, all but one of our G7 ambassadors were women. So that included the US, France, Germany, Italy, Canada, Japan. What have I forgotten? I think that's about it. Now that's changed. Until recently, we had a female ambassador in Russia, a female ambassador in Ukraine. We had a female ambassador to NATO, to the United Nations, to Washington as well. So this is actually the map of the few countries where we haven't yet had a female ambassador, but there's no particular reason why we shouldn't have. And somebody said to me that Israel is marked blue on this map, if you can find it. Interestingly, we did appoint a woman to Israel, but then it was many years ago, she became very ill and wasn't able to take up the job. And the countries that are orange, actually, we did have female ambassadors, but they were resident in a neighbouring country, not actually resident in that capital. But this hasn't happened by accident. The leadership of my ministry has worked very hard to make sure that women do know that they have the right skills to do these very top jobs, and that because all these jobs are filled competitively. So you have to apply and you are then in a competition with the other people who've applied for the job. So we are appointed on merit. But we've tried very hard to encourage women to apply so that we have a field of candidates that includes women or people with other from other diverse backgrounds, maybe lower socioeconomic backgrounds or LGBTQ backgrounds. We've tried hard to increase our diversity across all these areas and fill senior jobs with people based on their talent and skills, not on who they are or being a man, as it maybe used to be in the past. And the government itself has done a lot of work on policies, legislation to support equality in the workplace since that original 1973 equalities legislation. In the middle there on the right, we've noted the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index, where, interestingly, I think the UK was around 14th last year, and this year has moved up to 4th place, and where Japan is 118th out of all the countries in the world. The criteria in that index include things like the degree, so education and access to education, where Japan scores very high. Access to healthcare is another one, where Japan also scores very high. Political representation, where Japan struggles. And, right now, I'm very excited that you have a female prime minister in Japan for the first time. But I think you still only have 3 female members of the cabinet. In the United Kingdom, we now have, I think it's around 45% of members of the House of Commons, elected parliamentarians, are women. So political parties have done their work as well. And I think the area where the scores are most challenging for Japan is the amount of unpaid work that women do. So that's looking after children, caring for elderly parents, housework, cooking. It's assessed, in society, how much of the burden of that unpaid work women carry. And I think there's still some way to go on that. And in the UK, I think it's much more accepted and normal that a husband and wife would share childcare responsibilities, some of the household responsibilities, and actually, interestingly, that they are taxed as individuals. And I think the tax system in Japan is an interesting question. I know it's being much talked about, this hyakuman no kabe. My question is, why don't you just change it to tax every individual based on their job role and their salary? But I don't think that's a very popular idea in Japan at the moment. How did, and then on the left-hand side, there is a graph showing the gender pay gap. So this is another way that you can measure the inequalities or less inequality between men and women, comparing the same type of job, how much are men paid and how much are women paid. And that gap has reduced very significantly in the UK. And one of the things that has changed the situation is that government legislation has required organisations to publish the data on what the gender pay gap is in their organisation. And I think that has helped to drive efforts to make change. Interestingly, in my ministry, and I think I hadn't quite realised this until I looked at the figures, our gender pay gap is now 0. So men and women are paid the same at the same grade, but it wasn't true for a long time. We've also more recently in the UK passed, we've listed the legislation here, the Equality Act 2010, which gives people legal rights for different diverse groups, whether it's gender or sexuality or disability as well. And it all comes in one piece of legislation, which people say has really helped. You don't have to sort of categorize yourself as one thing or another, because often people in less well represented groups are part of many different less represented groups than and not just one. At the same time, so I've been coming to Japan. I said I've worked here 3 times. The first time was 1989 to 93. The second time was 2012 to 16. And the third time, this time from 2021. It really does feel like things are changing. There are, when I'm asked about sort of what do you think about, women's empowerment or women's katsuyaku in Japan, I always say, Japan has so many really impressive women. The point is people have the skills to do a great job, and we should recognize people for their talent and their skills. I don't particularly like being described as a female ambassador. I say to people, I'm an ambassador. I'm here to do the best job I possibly can. Whether I'm a woman or a man, to me, doesn't really make any difference. I think, and as I said, you're Prime Minister, so Takeshi Sanae, I met her many times when she was Economic Security Minister and before she became Prime Minister. Other Japanese ministers, Abe Toshiko, the former MEX minister. Hello Kitty, I'm not sure I see Hello Kitty as a great women's equality model, but never mind, she was born in London, did you know that? We host events at our embassy to create more networks for women. So we've done some research because the 2021 UK-Japan Free Trade Agreement, which we call the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, had a chapter on women in trade and women's economic empowerment. So we've been working with Japan on what we can do to promote more women's empowerment. And one of the findings of some research we did was that one of the best things you can do is provide women access to networks. This is true of everybody. It's true of young people across the board. When people can connect with other people working in the same sphere, or who they might connect with to identify what they could do next, networks are a very important part of that. So at the top there, we've held a couple of receptions for women working in defence. Defence usually seen as more of a male domain, but actually when you look hard, there are a lot of women, very talented women working in defence. The lady at the bottom left there was at the time the captain of a UK offshore patrol vessel patrolling around the Indo-Pacific. We had the British women's lacrosse team visited Japan, and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh there in the middle, meeting Governor Koike, another great female role model in Japan. They were also wanted to talk about different, the sort of promotion of equality for different groups in society. And then in the middle, METI, interestingly, have a group of companies that they award a kind of Nadeshko brand to. So they are companies that meet certain qualifications for making good efforts to support women's economic empowerment. And they came to our embassy, and we did a talk and had a Q&A session with them. So, and then of course, Naoko Yamazaki, one of your fantastic female astronauts, who spent time at the space station. You do have some really fantastic role models in Japan. And it's really important, I think, as a woman working in the job that I do, I like to make sure that I'm visible and that I act normally, and people start to just think it's normal to have a woman doing the job that I do. But I know it's important to be visible, and to sort of offer a role model to other women, but also to help everybody understand that we're all part of society, and if we're not using all of the talent we have, we won't succeed. It's also very important, I think, to be a mentor to other people. So when people ask for advice, or when they're not thinking about the possibilities that they have, to help point out to them the chances that they have and the things they could do. One of the things I often notice in Japan is that if you're in a meeting and there's a table, it's usually men who take the place at the table and the women who take the seat at the back. And sometimes I physically have to take women and say, come and sit at the table. You're here, you have a role, take up your position at the table or at the front of the room. And I think we can all help encourage each other to do that. And then finally, as I said, mentoring and having role models is really important. One of the things that we are running as the UK Embassy in Japan at the moment is an initiative called Musubi, which is designed to create more opportunities for all young people and future leaders between the United Kingdom and Japan. You, the young people, you're the future. You're the people, you and your counterparts are the people who will be our leaders of the future and will take the UK-Japan relationship forward. And we want to make sure that we're investing in creating connections and relationships and understanding between the United Kingdom and Japan for people at a stage when your minds are very open and you're learning a lot. A number of the programs that the private sector sponsors, so we don't have a lot of money for this, so we're asking companies to help sponsor and fund programs. It's really interesting how many companies in Japan have been really excited at the prospect of running women in the boardroom programs or women in business mentoring programs between British and Japanese young women, but also to support young people who've spent time in Japan or the UK on some of these programs to think, men and women, what career might they look for in the future? What possibilities do they have? So including at our Expo Pavilion in Osaka, just finished, of course, in mid-October. We had a visitor journey that talked about the United Kingdom as an open, creative and innovative country, a country where, yes, the Choshu Five went to learn a lot back in the 1800s, but also where we've invented a lot of solutions to global challenges, technology. The World Wide Web was invented in the United Kingdom. The telephone was invented in the United Kingdom. But just reminding people that we are very open and we invite young people to come and spend time in the UK. And we had a sort of tagline of "Come build the future." I guess women or men, young people in Japan and your kind of counterparts in the United Kingdom, you really matter to us because you're the future for our two countries' relationship. And I encourage you all to have a look at our Musubi initiative or to think about the United Kingdom as a place where you might study or take your studies further. So I'm going to stop there because I want to leave some time for you to ask questions. I'm happy to talk more about any of that or about my career or about UK-Japan relations or anything you want to talk about. So thank you very much. There you go. You're the next generation.
Thank you, Ambassador, once again for that wonderful presentation. I was wondering if I could ask both Dr. Fujii and President Fujii and Dr. Hayashi, AVP Hayashi, to give a brief reply or comment if you have any.
Well, comment or yes. Well, thank you so much for the talk about this sort of story around this British diplomacy, or in a way, to develop this diversity issues. And what's also quite surprising that before 1973, so the women had to resign, and was yes. And I don't know if there used to be also the same kind of customs in Japan in the Japanese diplomacy, but I have may I ask a couple of questions? So the first question is, in general, I mean, in the field of diplomats in the UK. So how is the balance between, or like a gender balance? That is one question. So in general. And then also another question from myself is, so this is the third time in Japan in your career, and then so maybe in these 15 or 20 years since your first time you were here, so that you saw some change. You have seen some changes in the way we treat these gender diversity issues.
Thank you very much. You're very kind, but it's not 20 years since I first came to Japan.
Sorry.
It's 36 or something. I'm much older than I look, maybe. And my children are 33, 31 and 29. So the UK Foreign Ministry, we have made a lot of progress, but there are still some challenges. At the entry level, for many years now, we've had more women than men joining the ministry. And I understand this is true of the Gaimasho, of the Japanese Foreign Ministry as well. The challenge is how to keep women in the workforce as they get married, have families, as their partners have different jobs and careers. And that's where we have to keep making efforts and providing policies or having policies that support women, men, families. And frankly, these days, men are as likely to find it tricky to be sent on a posting to the other end of the world because maybe their wife, is a top corporate lawyer and earning a lot more money than he is, because our civil servants are not that rich. And so for their family, her career may be the more important career. So everybody has to make some kind of sacrifice or difficult choices, and this support for couples to both be able to keep working is very important. In our very senior grades, we used to have a much lower representation of women. We've done better on that recently because we've made real efforts, but it's still harder to persuade women to apply for the most senior jobs than it is men. So there's still work to do. And then I think you asked, what have I noticed has changed? Well, I've definitely noticed change, as I said. When I first came in, started work in the embassy in 1990, really the only women I ever met in a Japanese office were the o-eru. And you're probably even too young to know what that was. So they were, that was a Japanese word, o-eru. So office ladies. And they made the tea and they did the photocopying. So I met very few women with careers. And I used to go out drinking with a lot of Japanese journalists because they had all the information. They had all the best information about what was going on in Japanese politics. And they were all men. And I used to say to them, why are there not women, doing your jobs? And they would say, well, we work really long hours and, we leave the office and then we go out eating and drinking with our colleagues and then we go back to the office to finish off the work. And I said, but why do you want to do that? Don't you want to have a life? So never mind. And of course, it's impossible for women to do that, but it should sort of be impossible for men to do that too. So that's definitely, it's definitely changed. We see women working in every aspect. Now you have a prime minister as well. You've had you've had a female defense minister before. Actually, Koike-san was defense minister, wasn't she? So, the more people have seen women taking senior positions, the more everybody will think that's a natural thing. And I think change is well underway. And I think your generation, I believe you all just think about each other as individuals. And, if you're going to get married and have a family, you need to be a partnership. Life is too expensive for just one of you to have a job and the other one of you to look after the home. I guess things like childcare and all of these arrangements to support that need to be in place. But, I've heard from colleagues that Japanese childcare provision is incredibly generous now, and actually way more so than in the United Kingdom. So I think a lot of the basic provision is now there, and now you have to create the norm, and I often say, I think Japan is about at the place where the UK was when I came to Japan nearly 40 years ago, in that all of the legislation is there, all of the protections in theory are there, the structures are there, but it hasn't yet really happened, and you may be some of the first people to just show that man or woman, career of any kind, having a family, being a partnership as individuals, as equal individuals, you can do it, but you might have to fight or break a few norms and expectations to do that. And I think that was where I was when I started my career.
Thank you very much. Professor Hayashi, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you very much for the great talk. I'm overwhelmed, intrigued by your choice of the topic as a British ambassador to talk to our students about gender and diplomacy as a diplomat, being a diplomat. Usually, I met many diplomats in the past, and they talk about the relationship between Japan and the home country, which is very important. And I'm sure Ambassador Longbottom can talk about it well, or even maybe better than any other ambassadors in the world. But she deliberately chose this topic for us and talk about what it is to be working as a diplomat, and but how is it connected to the public service, and how she has what kind of message Ambassador Longbottom has to the young generation, and in that context, and also I have to say one word, the picture you showed us in the library in your home, that reminded me of the headquarter meeting room in that of our office in the 13th floor. 13階, 12th floor. Across the board, men. So the president of the
The
University of
photos
Tokyo.
of all the presidents,
Yes.
past presidents, were displayed.
And
there.
the first one wears the military uniform. So, so I want that reminded me of that picture associated with our situation. But anyway, you are the first ambassador, and I would like to ask you first approximate 2 questions. One question is, you have 3 children. How did you manage that? Because I'm curious. I'm sorry if you can talk as much as you could, but it's a lot. I have 2 children, and I think being a diplomat and going all over the world and having 3 children is, I think, miracle to me, right? So I would like to know about if you have any message to our young people. And I would like to also hear from you to the message to our male students, because our student ratio is 80% male and 20% female students. And I see that today we have many male students. So maybe some of them say, okay, well, maybe it's in the future it can be my problem, but it's not really relevant for me or something like that. So for those who feel that it's the story, your story is not relevant, maybe you can give them a message. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent questions. So my first 2 children were born in Japan during my first posting here. And my husband and I, we weren't married when we first came. We got married, and then we thought we would like to have a family. And at the time, in the foreign ministry, my ministry, to have a baby and take maternity leave, the expectation was you would return home. So to give birth and then to have maternity leave and then somehow at some point decide what you were going to do next. Well, my husband was here. He had a job with a company, and we wanted to carry on being here. And so I had to get special permission from both my line manager, my manager, and my ambassador to be allowed to give birth in Japan, which of course was completely safe and an excellent medical system, and take maternity leave and then return to work. But the deal was that the maternity leave was the minimum fully paid maternity leave, which was 16 weeks, and there would be nobody filling my job in the meantime, and then I came back to work full time, which actually was fine for me. In those days, maybe that was kind of the expectation. What's really interesting now is that we don't even, there are very few restrictions. So I have many female colleagues. In fact, the job I did, so this role model thing, I noticed that every person who took that job after me was a woman. And every one of them had a baby in Japan. It's kind of weird, right? But I think by showing it was possible, people could see that that was going to be okay for them as well. Those rules have changed completely now. We have female colleagues who, if they have a baby in Japan, they can take up to a year of maternity leave whilst still living here, and somebody covers the job and then they can return to work. So that's changed dramatically. My husband was a very important part of having 3 children and 2 jobs and traveling the world and making it work. So he was always incredibly supportive, but also played his part. So, you know, we divided up the responsibility for looking after the children, but we also did have full-time help, and I recommend it as very important. We quite often had somebody living in our house with us or coming to work every day for the whole day to look after our children. And if you can find somebody you trust to do that, then I think you can be comfortable continuing with your work. And my children haven't suffered. I think, you know, they are three incredibly resilient and actually moving country every 4 years. So they were born in Japan, but we left when they were tiny. We lived in the UK for 3 years, then we lived in Holland for 4 years, and then in Poland for 4 years. The whole family together. The children went to British schools or international schools. I think they learned so much from doing that. Their attitudes to the world are, you know, very open. My oldest daughter is a professional sportswoman. She happens to play cricket for England and is the England captain. And it's interesting when the media write about her, they say, oh, her mother was a diplomat and she grew up living all over the world. And so she takes it in her stride, you know, going on cricket tours. But it's kind of true. You know, she has an ability to cope with that that change and sort of, you know, traveling around the world. And then I think the other thing I would say is my children, because they've seen both of us work and, you know, sometimes it was my husband's job. We kind of followed first. Sometimes it was my job. Now my husband has retired very early and his job is looking after me. So he does the cooking, the washing, the shopping, and supports me to do the job that I do full time. My children, you know, my son would never assume that his girlfriend or maybe future wife should be responsible for food or cooking or washing. He sees that as a partnership. And I think that's why having you know, men and women both working, you're sort of showing your children and the next generation what kind of equality is and how life can be. And I think that's probably my message to all of you. I was quite conscious as I was talking, you know, how will the men in the room feel about this? And sometimes I do think that you know, in the UK, in UK society these days, life can feel quite tough for men because, you know, there's a lot of focus on the position of women and women who have been discriminated against for years. And frankly, I believe women are very discriminated against in Japan. For men, it can feel tough if that's the big topic of conversation. But I think everybody has an interest in the whole of society being able to bring their skills to the economy and to the country, to science, to thought. You know, we all want everybody in society to be able to make their contribution. So we all have to respect each other. This is not an anti-male thing. It's actually about everybody having the best opportunity to thrive and be the best person and the best version of themselves they can be.
Thank you very much. We're kind of running out of time, but we want to open up the floor for questions. I know you have many questions, so I'm going to make a request. One question at a time, and make your question concise, please. Okay. And I'm going to divide the group into 3 categories: first and second year students, third and fourth year students, and postgraduate students, MA, PhD students, because I want to make it possible for all of you to ask questions. So why don't we start with first and second year students? Anyone want to ask questions? Oh, good. Okay. Well, maybe we'll go with you first.
My question is that about, you mentioned that there's an issue about the motivation that women aren't like eager to apply to higher positions, and is there any suggestion on how to tackle that besides like creating a leading example?
Thank you. So, as you said, role models are one way that really helps. Seeing other people that look like you doing a job helps you to believe that you could do it too. But I think organizations have a responsibility to create the environment where women can see they have every possibility to advance. And then I think finally, and this links back to that question about men and women, you know, I've heard a rumor that in Japan, if you're a woman and you study science, you might be seen as not very attractive to men and you might never get married. I mean, these kind of attitudes are shocking, and everybody has a responsibility to not believe those things. So I think that's a good place to start, that to believe that man or woman, you know, men can do fashion and, you know, be chefs and be creative and artistic. Women can be tough scientists and, or not even tough, just great scientists, astronauts and prime ministers. And let's just get rid of some of these sort of stigmas and beliefs. Thank you.
And my question would be that you pointed out that gender shouldn't impact the way a person does her job. However, how strongly does your identity as a woman shows or impacts your role as an ambassador?
Interesting question. I'm not sure is probably the answer. So I like to be a human being, and an ambassador is quite a you know, particularly in Japan, it's seen as a very, you know, kokyu role, very erai. People run around after me, they open doors for me, they call me Your Excellency. And I just try to say, call me Julia. I don't need these things. I'm just another human being. And I think that kind of connection with people is really important to me. And just being myself, asking the questions I want to ask, challenging things, not just accepting things the way they are. That's just me. I don't think it's because I'm a woman. You know, people have different personality types. Some people are warm, friendly people who, you know, there's always somebody in the room who worries about how everybody feels and is everybody's well-being okay. That's not me. It's just, that isn't my personality. So I don't think there's a particular female personality. I think, you know, we're just all individuals. But I'm conscious I'm a woman doing a job that often people don't expect. And when my husband and I turn up to things, it doesn't happen anymore because people know me now. But at the beginning, quite often people would assume he was the ambassador, not me. But he's very good, and he's always like, no, not me, she's the ambassador. So yeah, I think just being gracious, being somebody that people want to work with, want to connect with, that's important, not particularly being a woman or a man.
What are important mindsets, in your opinion, in tackling or per se breaking the glass ceiling? Because especially in Japan, I think there's like this psychological barrier in like breaking the glass ceiling and going forward to making the society a more equal place.
Yeah, very good question. I mean, again, we're all different personalities. I think the way I went about things was I was very lucky that my parents, and including particularly my father, used to tell me that I could do anything I wanted to do. And, you know, he believed in me, even though he was quite conservative. So I just grew up with an attitude that if I want to do something, I can do it. And I think things like sport actually are very helpful for kind of building self-confidence and teamwork and a courage to sort of step out and compete, and maybe sometimes you lose and sometimes you win, but you're going to keep trying. And that kind of attitude, I think, is really important. It's hard if people don't have that personality, and then they need more people around them, I guess, to say, no, it's okay, you know, you should try, you should give this a go. And then for senior people, you know, they need to be encouraging to everybody with the right talent and skills to try for these things. But, you know, you've just had one glass ceiling broken in Japan, which is a woman becoming prime minister. So many more will follow, I think.
Thank you. Hayashi, do you have a comment about this? Or?
Well, yes, as Ambassador Longbottom said, be tough and fearless. That's the one asset. So try to give it always a challenge. But I think I would say it's very important to have your own faith that you are doing the right thing. I think if you are too calculative or calculating you want to break the ceiling, glass ceiling. I think whether you break the glass ceiling or not is maybe the secondary. Whether you want to achieve something and you have the faith that you are doing the right thing. That is, I think, the most important thing to achieve something. And I think one of the achievement is break the glass ceiling. But even if you say, okay, you cannot make the prime minister, but you have achieved this one, and that would be a great thing. So please think that I think the title or the ranking. I mean, I'm very grateful that I'm now executive vice president thanks to President Fujii. But because of that, I can achieve many things, and from this position, and I can also talk to you from here, which is a big privilege. And I'm so grateful for that. So if you think about this way, that you want to achieve something and have this faith, then you will win. You will win the fight. Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, I'm doing research in Cambridge for a month this April, and also I'm a great fan of 007, so I'm very honored. So my question is about the Brexit. At that time, the referendum, I thought it was a bad decision, but I'm currently reconsidering about that because by observing the current world trend of the improvement of the right wing, sometimes too right wing, I think sometimes too strong liberalism makes the world worse. So I want to ask you what was the pros and cons of Brexit since the referendum as you representative of the United Kingdom and also as a citizen of the United Kingdom, if possible.
Thank you. So I think Brexit was a really challenging. It was a very challenging thing for people in the United Kingdom because actually, in a strange way, it wasn't so much about staying or leaving the EU. It was a similar debate in some ways to the debate in the US about sovereignty or sharing sovereignty with other countries, having less control over your destiny as a country, and a bit about immigration, though there's an interesting story, which is, and also I know Professor Hayashi is an expert in journalism and how people are influenced through the media. We had a significant moment of kind of fake news in the UK media, voices that were very successful at arguing for Brexit and suggesting that immigration was a really big problem in the United Kingdom and that immigrants from or workers from Eastern Europe, for example, other EU countries, were taking everybody's jobs and places in schools for their children and their healthcare. What's interesting is that of the different regions of the United Kingdom, Wales, as I mean, it's a nation, but it's part of the whole United Kingdom. They have almost no immigration, and they received the most money of any, well, almost the most, from the EU to support their social and economic infrastructure. And the majority of people in Wales voted for Brexit because somehow they believed that this immigration thing was terrible, and yet it was not something that affected their lives at all. So it was a difficult moment for all kinds of reasons. Once we left, and the whole negotiation between the then Conservative government and the EU was incredibly difficult, and I think caused a lot of damage to our relationship with fellow EU countries. Once that was concluded and we had an arrangement for leaving, I think this is a bit about that kind of, you don't always win, or you don't always, you have to deal with the situation you're in. I think the United Kingdom has a lot of resilience of thought and government policy making, and we have a strong civil service and a political system, actually, that was able to say, right, okay, now what are we going to do? And I think the policies as government around Global Britain show it, you know, demonstrating that we still wanted to play a role in the world. We needed to do that with partners because we're not a superpower. We're a country that needs to work with others, that believes in, actually still believes in liberal values, though, interestingly, the problem with the world is if we're the only liberals and we're the only completely free market and others don't play by those rules, that just doesn't work anymore. So I think the UK is still very much a liberal country, has a liberal mindset, but in economic terms, we're starting to do a little bit more industrial policy, government thinking about where we support certain industries or sectors to compete with the rest of the world, especially in science, in space and quantum and cyber and AI. We have strong capabilities, but we have to protect them enough or hold on to them enough, but also share them with others enough for everybody's success. So when the vote happened, personally, I was very sad for about an hour. And then I thought, I mean, I was still sad, but then I thought, actually, I believe as a country, we can manage this. And now, I think interestingly with Japan, the UK-Japan relationship outside the EU is even stronger. And things like joining CPTPP, which we couldn't have done as a member of the EU, providing some leadership and, you know, things like Ukraine, it hasn't made a difference whether we're in or outside the EU. Our government's played a very strong leading role, and they're very busy right now on Ukraine and how we manage this whole US-Russia proposal for a peace deal that, you know, we want to make sure the Ukrainians are supported for their future. And there's a very strong sense of leadership that is kind of in the DNA, I think, of the British government and people to be a leader in these kind of issues or to kind of work with others in leadership. So I think you're right, it's not all bad. And partly it's about testing yourself when things don't go well. How do you respond to that difficult situation is a big part of life, actually. Thank you, and good luck with your cosmology.
Thank you very much. On that note, unfortunately, our time is up. Would you like to make final comment, or?
I just wanted to say about, in fact, our relation with the EU and also UK. If I think about it, after Brexit, so and then we could also like a kind of a one-to-one relation with UK with. Yeah, has been even strengthened, as you said. So that's the way UK took, and then to go on in this, especially for this scientific collaboration, as you're in a cosmology field, right? So that then in any case, we also want to also have some more relation with the UK, but as well as EU, European Union too. So it's that's the way how we will be. strengthening our ties in between. So.
Thank you very much. On that note, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we have to close, but please remain seated because I'm going to ask Professor Hayashi to give a closing remark.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Longbottom. Julia. Yay. Thank you very much. And also thank you for all of you to come over to this evening. And earlier, before this event, I discussed with Professor Yaguchi what kind of speech I would make as a concluding remarks, and he suggested about being an ambassador, first female ambassador. And I said, oh, I don't know about that. You know, many ambassadors don't like that. So I would say I would prefer not to mention about it. And you started with being your ambassadorship as a woman. So this is really something for me big. And also a wonderful surprise and wonderful encouragement for me as a woman to pursue a career as an executive vice president at this university, and also as a citizen who see such a high-ranking official being so nice and also relatable to my own life. But I just say that being an ambassador may appear to be a really wonderful, exciting career, but we also understand that it comes with immense responsibility and maybe also some sacrifice too, to go around the world together with a family, which is a really nice thing, but you have to work on it. So I really admire your career. And we live in a world that is becoming so increasingly interconnected, as President Fujii said, but yet at the same time also deeply divided. And ambassadors really must navigate and balance multiple interests, sensitivities, and conflicts with great delicacy. So this evening, we were fortunate to hear directly from Ambassador Longbottom, or Julia, who over the past 4 years has been the forefront of the partnership between the United Kingdom and Japan. And your insights and knowledge were truly inspiring for all of us. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. And let me conclude by saying that we look forward to further deepening our partnership with the United Kingdom as we work together toward a more just, inclusive, and interconnected global society. Thank you very much. Thank you.